The black SUV didn't brake in time. Metal screamed against metal. Glass shattered across the highway like 1,000 diamonds catching the last light of the day. Steam hissed from the crushed hood. Inside, Sophia Chin gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles white, her breath coming in short gasps. Her ears rang. Everything felt slow and fast at the same time. Marco. Her voice cracked. Silence. She turned her head, pain shooting through her neck. Her husband sat in the passenger seat, slumped forward against the seatbelt. Blood trickled from a cut above his eyebrow. His eyes were closed. Marco. She reached for him, her hands shaking. He didn't move. Sophia's heart hammered in her chest. This couldn't be happening. Not now. Not after everything. She pressed 2 fingers against his neck. A pulse. Faint but there. Oh God. Oh God, please. Footsteps crunched on broken glass outside the car. Sophia's head snapped up. 3 men approached through the smoke and steam. They wore dark suits. Their faces were calm. Too calm. One of them, tall with a scar running down his left cheek, tapped on her window with the barrel of a gun. Mrs. Salvatore, he said, his voice muffled through the glass. Step out of the vehicle. Sophia's blood turned to ice. These men weren't here to help. She looked at Marco again. Still unconscious. Still bleeding. His expensive suit was torn at the shoulder. His wedding ring caught the light. The man with the scar tapped again, harder this time. Don't make this difficult. Sophia's mind raced. If she got out, they'd kill her. If she stayed, they'd kill them both. There was no good choice. There never was in Marco's world. She'd known this might happen. You don't marry a man like Marco Salvatore without understanding what comes with the name. Power. Money. Enemies. So many enemies. But knowing it might happen and living through it were 2 very different things. Last chance, the man said. Sophia reached for the door handle. Her hand trembled. But before she could pull it, Marco's hand shot out and grabbed her wrist. His grip was strong. Controlled. His eyes were still closed. Don't, he whispered, so quietly she almost didn't hear it. Sophia froze. Her heart stopped. He was awake. Marco squeezed her wrist once, then let go. His hand fell back to his lap. His chest rose and fell slowly. Anyone looking in would think he was unconscious. Maybe dying. But Sophia knew better now. He was listening. Calculating. Waiting. The man with the scar pulled the door open. Cold air rushed in. Out. Now. Sophia looked at Marco one more time. His face was still. Peaceful, almost. Like he was somewhere far away. She climbed out of the car, her legs weak beneath her. The 3 men surrounded her. The one with the scar smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. Where is it? He asked. Where's what? Don't play stupid. Salvatore was carrying something. We know he picked it up from the docks this morning. We know it's worth more than both your lives combined. He stepped closer. So I'll ask you one more time. Where's it? Sophia's mind spun. She didn't know what they were talking about. Marco never told her about his business. That was the rule. The one rule that kept her safe. Or at least it was supposed to. I don't know, she said. The man backhanded her across the face. Pain exploded through her cheek. She stumbled, tasting blood. Wrong answer. He raised his hand again. A gunshot cracked through the air. The man with the scar collapsed, a red hole blooming in the center of his forehead. The other 2 men spun around, reaching for their weapons. 2 more shots. Clean. Precise. They dropped. Sophia's ears rang. She couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. Marco stood beside the car, a gun in his hand. Blood still dripped from his forehead, but his eyes were sharp. Focused. Deadly. He wasn't unconscious. He'd never been unconscious. He'd been waiting. Watching. Letting them think he was helpless. Get back in the car, Marco said. His voice was calm. Like he'd just asked her to pass the salt at dinner. Sophia didn't move. She stared at the 3 bodies on the ground. At the man who was her husband. At the gun still smoking in his hand. Sophia. His eyes met hers. There was something in them she couldn't name. Something cold and something else. Something that almost looked like regret. Now. She climbed back into the driver's seat. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. Marco got in beside her, tucking the gun into his jacket. He wiped the blood from his forehead with the back of his hand. Drive, he said. Where? Away from here. Sophia turned the key. The engine sputtered, coughed, then roared to life. The car limped forward, metal scraping, but it moved. They drove in silence for 5 minutes. 10. Sophia's mind was blank. Empty. Shock probably. Finally Marco spoke. You did well back there. Sophia laughed. Came out broken. Wrong. I didn't do anything. Exactly. He looked at her. You didn't panic. You didn't give them anything. That's more than most people would do. You pretended to be unconscious. Yes. You let them threaten me? Yes. Why? Marco was quiet for a long moment. Because I needed to know who they worked for. And because you were safer if they thought I couldn't protect you. Sophia's hands tightened on the wheel. That doesn't make sense. It does in my world. She wanted to scream. To cry. To pull over and run and never look back. But she didn't. Because running wouldn't change anything. She'd married Marco Salvatore 2 years ago. She'd said the vows. She'd taken the name. And in his world that meant something. It meant everything. Who were they? She asked. Giordano family. Small time. Trying to move up. What did they want? Marco didn't answer. Sophia glanced at him. His jaw was tight. His eyes stared straight ahead. Marco, what did they want? He turned to look at her, and for just a second she saw something in his face she'd never seen before. Fear. Something I should have never brought into our lives, he said quietly. Before Sophia could ask what that meant, Marco's phone buzzed. He pulled it out, read the screen, and his expression went cold. We need to get off the road, he said. Now. What? What? Because they weren't the only ones coming for us. Sophia's blood ran cold. Would you trust him? The safe house wasn't safe. Sophia could feel it the moment they pulled into the gravel driveway. It was too quiet. Too isolated. A small cabin in the woods, 30 miles outside the city. No neighbors. No street lights. Just trees and darkness and the sound of their own breathing. Marco got out first, scanning the tree line. His hand rested on the gun in his jacket. Stay in the car, he said. Marco. Stay. He moved toward the cabin, his steps careful and deliberate. Sophia watched him disappear around the side of the house. Her heart pounded in her ears. 1 minute passed. 2. Then Marco reappeared at the front door, motioning for her to come. Sophia climbed out slowly. Her legs felt like jelly. Everything hurt. Her face where the man had hit her, her neck from the crash, her chest from the seatbelt. But she walked. Because that's what you did in Marco's world. You kept moving. Inside, the cabin smelled like dust and old wood. There was a small kitchen, a living room with a couch that had seen better days, and 2 doors leading to what Sophia assumed were bedrooms. Marco locked the door behind them. Then the windows. Then he pulled the curtains closed. We'll stay here tonight, he said. Tomorrow I'll make some calls. Figure out our next move. Sophia stood in the middle of the room, hugging herself. Our next move? Marco, what is happening? Why are people trying to kill us? Not us, Marco said quietly. Me. That's not better. I know. He walked to the kitchen, opened a cabinet, and pulled out a first aid kit. He set it on the counter and gestured for Sophia to sit. She didn't move. Sophia. No. Her voice was firmer than she expected. You don't get to do that. You don't get to pretend like this is normal. Like you can just fix me up and everything will be fine. 3 people died tonight, Marco. You killed them. They would have killed you. That's not the point. Then what is? Sophia's throat tightened. The point is I don't know who you are. The words hung in the air between them. Marco's expression didn't change. But something flickered in his eyes. Something that looked almost like pain. Yes, you do, he said softly. No. I know Marco Salvatore, the man who owns half the restaurants in the city. The man who wears expensive suits and donates to children's hospitals. The man who... She swallowed hard. The man who asked me to marry him in a bookstore because he knew I loved books more than anything. Marco was quiet. But I don't know the man who carries a gun everywhere he goes, Sophia continued. I don't know the man who can kill 3 people without blinking. I don't know that man at all. You've always known what I was. No. I knew you had business. I knew you weren't just a restaurant owner. But this. She gestured around the cabin. This is different. This is real, Marco finished. This is real, Sophia. Everything else was the pretend part. The words hit her like a punch to the gut. Marco crossed the room and stood in front of her. Close but not touching. He never touched her unless she wanted him to. That was one thing she could count on. I didn't lie to you, he said. I just didn't tell you everything. That's the same thing. No, it's not. His voice was calm, steady. I didn't tell you because I wanted to protect you. Because the less you knew, the safer you were. That's how this works. It's not working very well, is it? Marco's jaw tightened. No. It's not. Sophia looked up at him. Really looked at him. His face was still bleeding from the cut on his forehead. His shirt was torn. His expensive suit, the one he'd worn to some business meeting she wasn't allowed to ask about, was ruined. But his eyes were the same. Dark. Intense. Watching her like she was the only person in the world who mattered. That's what had pulled her in 2 years ago. Not his money. Not his power. That look. Like he saw her. Really saw her. Why did you marry me? She asked suddenly. Marco blinked. What? Why did you marry me, Marco? You could have married anyone. Someone from your world. Someone who understood all of this. Why me? He was quiet for a long moment. Then, slowly, he reached up and brushed a strand of hair away from her face. His fingers were gentle. Because you were the first person in 10 years who looked at me and didn't see a weapon, he said quietly. Sophia's breath caught. Everyone in my world sees me as something to use or something to fear, Marco continued. But you looked at me like I was just a man. A man who liked books and bad coffee and watching you smile when you thought I wasn't looking. He dropped his hand. I married you because you made me remember what it felt like to be human. Sophia didn't know what to say. Her heart ached in a way she didn't understand. And now, she whispered. What am I now? Marco's expression darkened. Now you're in danger because of me. And I will do whatever it takes to keep you alive. Even if you hate me for it. Before Sophia could respond, Marco's phone buzzed again. He pulled it out, read the message, and his entire body went rigid. What? Sophia asked. What is it? Marco looked at her, and for the first time since she'd met him, she saw real fear in his eyes. They have your sister, he said. The world stopped. What? Giordano's men took Lily an hour ago. They're holding her until I give them what they want. Sophia couldn't breathe. No. No. Lily doesn't have anything to do with this. She's just a teacher. She doesn't even know. I know. Then why? Because she's your sister. And hurting her hurts you. And hurting you? Marco's voice went cold. Gets to me. Sophia's legs gave out. She sank onto the couch, her mind spinning. Lily. Her baby sister. 23 years old. Still lived in their childhood apartment. Still believed the world was mostly good. And now she was in the hands of people who killed for a living. We have to call the police, Sophia said. No. Marco. If we call the police, Lily dies. That's how this works. Then what do we do? Marco crouched down in front of her, his eyes level with hers. We give them what they want. But I don't even know what that is. I do. Sophia stared at him. What did you take from them, Marco? Marco hesitated. Just for a second. But Sophia saw it. Information, he finally said. Names, addresses, bank accounts. Proof of what the Giordano family has been doing for the past 5 years. If that information gets out, they're finished. All of them. Why did you take it? Because they killed someone close to me. And I promised I would make them pay. Sophia's chest tightened. Who did they kill? Marco looked away. Someone who saved my life when I was 17. Someone who gave me a chance when no one else would. He stood up, his jaw set. I'll make the trade. The information for Lily. But you need to understand something, Sophia. What? Once I give them what they want, they'll come after me anyway. They can't afford to let me live. I know too much. Then don't do it, Sophia said quickly. Don't give them anything. We'll find another way. There is no other way. Marco's voice was firm. And I'm not letting your sister die because of my mistakes. Sophia stood up, her hands shaking. What about you? If you do this, you'll die. Maybe. Probably. Marco. He cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing away tears she didn't realize were falling. I need you to listen to me, he said softly. If something happens to me, there's a man named Victor. He works for me. He's loyal. He'll make sure you and Lily are protected. He'll make sure you're safe. I don't want to be safe, Sophia whispered. I want you to be alive. Marco smiled. It was sad. Broken. I know. He kissed her forehead. Then he let her go. I'm making the call, he said. The trade happens tomorrow at noon. Downtown. The old shipping yard. I'm coming with you. No. Marco. No, Sophia. His voice was steel. You're staying here. You're staying alive. That's not up for discussion. He turned and walked toward the bedroom, pulling out his phone. Sophia stood alone in the living room, her heart shattering into 1,000 pieces. What would you do in her place? Sophia couldn't sleep. She lay on the couch, staring at the ceiling, listening to Marco move around in the other room. He was making phone calls, giving orders, preparing for tomorrow, preparing to die. The thought made her stomach twist. She'd spent the last 2 years trying not to think too hard about what Marco did. It was easier that way. Easier to focus on the good parts, the quiet dinners, the way he listened when she talked about her day, the way he always remembered how she took her coffee. But now there was no avoiding it. Marco Salvatore was a killer. And tomorrow he might be killed. The bedroom door opened. Marco stepped out, still wearing his torn suit. He looked exhausted. Older somehow. "You should try to sleep," he said. "I can't." He nodded, like he expected that answer. Then he walked to the kitchen and poured 2 glasses of water. He handed one to Sophia. "Drink." She took it but didn't drink. "How can you be so calm?" "Practice." "That's not funny." "I'm not joking." Sophia set the glass down on the coffee table. Do you do this a lot?" "Almost die, I mean." Marco sat down in the armchair across from her. "More than I'd like. Less than I probably deserve." "Don't say that." "It's true." "No, it's not." Sophia leaned forward. "You're not a monster, Marco. I know you think you are, but you're not. You don't know half the things I've done. I know you donated $20,000 to the children's hospital without anyone knowing. I know you paid for Mrs. Chen's cancer treatment when she couldn't afford it. I know you hired Tommy from the old neighborhood even though he had a record because you said everyone deserves a second chance." She paused. "I know you, Marco. Maybe not all of you. But enough." Marco was quiet for a long moment. Then he said very softly, "I don't deserve you. Maybe not. But you've got me anyway." Something shifted in Marco's expression. Something vulnerable. He stood up and crossed the room, sitting down beside her on the couch. Close but not touching. They sat in silence. It wasn't uncomfortable. It never was with Marco. He was one of the few people Sophia had ever met who understood that silence didn't need to be filled. "Tell me about your sister," Marco said eventually. Sophia blinked. "What?" "Lily. Tell me about her. You never talk about her much." It was true. Sophia kept her family separate from Marco's world as much as possible. It felt safer that way. She's the good one," Sophia said quietly. "Growing up, I was always getting into trouble. Reading when I should have been studying. Sneaking out to bookstores. But Lily did everything right. Good grades. Good friends. She became a teacher because she actually wanted to help people." Sophia's voice cracked. "She doesn't deserve this." "No," Marco agreed. "She doesn't. If something happens to her, it won't." "You can't promise that." "Yes," Marco said, turning to look at her. "I can. Because I will give them whatever they want, and I will do whatever it takes, and your sister will walk out of there alive. That's a promise, Sophia. The only one that matters." Sophia believed him. That was the worst part. She believed him completely. "What about you?" she whispered. Marco didn't answer. Sophia reached out and took his hand. His fingers were warm, strong, covered in calluses she'd always wondered about but never asked. "I don't want you to die," she said. "I know. I mean it, Marco. I can't." Her throat closed up. Marco squeezed her hand. "Look at me." She did. "I have been preparing for tomorrow my entire life," he said quietly. "I know what I'm walking into. I know the odds. And I'm telling you right now, I'm not planning on dying. But if you do, if I do, then you keep living. You take care of Lily. You go back to your bookstore job that you love. You live the life you were supposed to have before I complicated everything. You didn't complicate anything." "Yes, I did." "No." Sophia's voice was firm. "You made everything more complicated and more beautiful and more terrifying and more real. And I wouldn't change it. Not 1 second of it." Marco stared at her. His dark eyes searched her face like he was trying to memorize every detail. Then slowly he leaned forward and kissed her. It wasn't like their other kisses. It wasn't gentle or sweet or careful. It was desperate. It was goodbye. Sophia kissed him back, her hands clutching his shirt, trying to hold on to something that was already slipping away. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were breathing hard. "I'm sorry," Marco whispered against her forehead. "For all of this. For dragging you into my world. For—" "Stop," Sophia said. "Just stop apologizing. You're not the villain in this story, Marco. You're not." "Then what am I?" Sophia pulled back just enough to look at him. "You're the man I chose. And I'd choose you again. Every time." Marco closed his eyes. A single tear slipped down his cheek. Sophia had never seen him cry before. She wiped it away with her thumb. They sat there together, holding each other as the night stretched on. Neither of them spoke. There was nothing left to say. Tomorrow would come whether they were ready or not. And when it did, everything would change. Is he protecting her, or controlling her? The shipping yard looked like a graveyard. Rusted containers stacked 3 stories high. Broken cranes reaching toward a gray sky. Puddles of oil reflecting nothing. Marco pulled the car to a stop at the entrance. He checked his gun one last time, then tucked it back into his jacket. "You promised you'd stay at the safe house?" he said without looking at Sophia. "I lied." She'd followed him in her own car, staying far enough back that he wouldn't notice until it was too late. Now they were both here. And there was nothing he could do about it. Marco's jaw tightened. "If something goes wrong, then we deal with it together." "Sophia." "I'm not arguing about this, Marco. That's my sister in there." Marco finally looked at her. His expression was unreadable. Then very quietly he said, "Stay behind me. Don't speak unless I tell you to. And if I say run, you run. Understood?" Sophia nodded. They got out of the car. The air smelled like rust in the ocean. Seagulls cried overhead. Somewhere in the distance, a shipping horn blared. Marco walked forward, his hand resting on the gun in his jacket. Sophia followed 3 steps behind. They turned a corner between 2 containers, and stopped. 7 men stood in the center of the yard. They wore suits. They carried guns. And in the middle of them, tied to a chair, was Lily. Sophia's heart stopped. Her sister looked terrified. Her eyes were red from crying. Her hands were bound behind her back. But she was alive. "Lily." Sophia started forward. Marco grabbed her arm, holding her back. "Wait." One of the men stepped forward. He was older than the others. Gray hair. Expensive suit. Cold eyes. "Mr. Salvatore," the man said. His voice was smooth. Polite. "Thank you for being punctual." "Giordano," Marco said. "Let the girl go." "Of course. As soon as you give me what I want." Marco reached into his jacket, every gun in the yard raised, and slowly pulled out a flash drive. He held it up. "Everything you asked for," Marco said. "Names, bank accounts, transactions. All of it." Giordano smiled. "How do I know you didn't make copies?" "Because I'm not stupid enough to try." "No. You're stupid enough to steal from me in the first place." Marco's expression didn't change. "You killed someone I cared about. I killed 3 of your men. Now we're trading. That's how this works." "Is it?" Giordano tilted his head. "Because from where I'm standing, this is how it works. I take the flash drive. I take your wife. I keep the girl. And you die right here in this dirty shipping yard where no one will ever find you." Sophia's blood turned to ice. Marco didn't move. That wasn't the deal. The deal changed. "Then so do I." Marco's hand moved, but not to his gun. He threw the flash drive, hard, into one of the nearby puddles. It sank with a soft splash. Every man in the yard froze. "That water is mixed with oil and rust," Marco said calmly. "In about 30 seconds that drive is going to be completely ruined. So you have a choice, Giordano. You can shoot me and lose everything. Or you can let the girl go and we can fish that drive out together." Giordano's face went red. "You're bluffing." "Try me." 20 seconds. Giordano's hand tightened on his gun. Sophia could see him calculating, weighing his options. 15 seconds. "Fine," Giordano spat. "Cut the girl loose." One of the men moved toward Lily, pulling out a knife. 10 seconds. Marco started walking forward. Sophia followed, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst. 5 seconds. The man cut through Lily's ropes. She stumbled forward, crying. Sophia caught her, holding her tight. "It's okay," Sophia whispered. "You're okay. I've got you." Marco reached the puddle and crouched down, fishing for the flash drive. "You found it?" He stood up, holding it dripping in his hand. "Pleasure doing business with you," Marco said. He turned to walk away. Giordano raised his gun. "I don't think so." Everything happened at once. Marco spun, his own gun already in his hand. 2 shots rang out. Giordano collapsed, a red stain spreading across his chest. But Marco stumbled too. Blood bloomed on his shoulder. "Marco!" Sophia screamed. The other men raised their weapons. More gunshots. But not from them. From the shadows. Men appeared from behind the containers. 6 of them. Dressed in black. Moving like ghosts. They fired with precision, taking down Giordano's men one by one. In less than 30 seconds it was over. Giordano's men were dead. Marco was still standing, clutching his bleeding shoulder. And from the shadows stepped a man Sofia had never seen before. Tall, dark skin, cold eyes. "Victor," Marco said, his voice strained. Victor nodded. "Boss. I told you to wait for my signal. You got shot. That was the signal." Marco almost smiled. Then he swayed. Sofia ran to him, catching him before he fell. "We need a hospital." "No hospitals," Marco said. "Victor, take them." "I'm not leaving you," Sofia said firmly. Marco looked at her. His face was pale, sweating. But his eyes were still sharp. "You don't have a choice." "Yes, I do. And I'm staying." Marco stared at her for a long moment. Then very softly he said, "Stubborn woman. You married me." "I did." Victor cleared his throat. "We need to move. Now. This place will be crawling with cops in 10 minutes. Marco nodded. He leaned heavily on Sofia as they walked back to the cars. Lily followed, still crying, still shaking. Victor got into the driver's seat of Marco's car. Sofia climbed in the back with Marco. Lily got in Sofia's car with one of Victor's men. As they pulled out of the shipping yard, Marco leaned his head back against the seat, his hand pressed to his bleeding shoulder. "Did you plan all of this?" Sofia asked quietly. Marco's lips twitched. "Some of it. The flash drive? A fake. The real one is somewhere Giordano would never find it. Getting shot. That part wasn't planned." Sofia's throat tightened. "How bad is it?" "I'll live." "You don't know that." Marco turned his head to look at her. His eyes were tired. Faint. But there was something else there too. Something soft. "I promised you I wasn't planning on dying," he said. "I keep my promises." Sofia took his hand. It was cold. Clammy. "I know," she whispered. They drove in silence. The city blurred past the windows. Sofia held Marco's hand the entire time, feeling his pulse beat steady and strong beneath her fingers. He was alive. They were both alive. And for now that was enough. "Do you think this is love or survival?" Marco woke up 3 days later in a bed he didn't recognize. The room was small, clean, sterile. Medical equipment beeped softly beside him. And 4 drip connected to his arm. He tried to sit up. Pain exploded through his shoulder. He hissed through his teeth. "Don't move." He turned his head. Sofia sat in a chair beside the bed. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. She wore the same clothes she'd been wearing at the shipping yard. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. "How long was I out?" Marco asked. 3 days. "Where are we?" "Victor's place. He has a doctor on call." "No questions asked." Marco nodded slowly. That sounded right. Victor always had a plan. "Lily?" he asked. "She's safe. Shaken up but safe. I sent her to stay with our aunt in Boston. Far away from all of this." "Good." Sofia stood up and poured a glass of water from the pitcher on the bedside table. She held it to Marco's lips. He drank slowly, grateful. When he finished, Sofia set the glass down and sat back down in her chair. They looked at each other. "You scared me," Sofia said quietly. "I know. I thought you were going to die." "I didn't. But you could have." "Yes." Sofia's hands clenched in her lap. "I can't do this, Marco." Something cold settled in Marco's chest. "Can't do what?" "This. Live like this. Never knowing if you're going to come home. Never knowing if someone's going to try to kill us." "I can't." Her voice broke. "I can't breathe when you're gone. I can't think. I can't function. And I hate it. I hate feeling this helpless." Marco was quiet for a long moment. Then he said very softly, "You want a divorce?" "No." Sofia looked up sharply. "No, that's not what I'm saying." "Then what are you saying?" Sofia stood up and paced to the window. She stared out at the city below. "I'm saying I need you to be honest with me," she said. "All the way honest. No more secrets. No more protecting me by keeping me in the dark. If we're going to do this, if we're going to stay married, I need to know everything." Marco studied her. Her back was straight. Her shoulders set. She wasn't crying. Wasn't breaking down. She was strong. Stronger than he'd given her credit for. "Everything?" he asked. "Everything. You won't like what you hear." "I don't care." Marco took a breath. It hurt. "Okay." Sofia turned around. "Okay. You want the truth? I'll give you the truth." Marco shifted in the bed, wincing. "I've killed 17 people. Some of them deserved it. Some of them probably didn't. I own businesses that launder money for half the criminal organizations on the East Coast. I've broken more laws than I can count. And before I met you, I didn't care. I was fine with being a monster. It was easier that way. He paused. But then I walked into a bookstore on a Tuesday afternoon, he continued quietly, and I saw you. You were arguing with a customer about whether Pride and Prejudice was a romance or a social commentary. You were so passionate about it, so alive. And I thought I'd like to know what that felt like. To care about something that didn't involve blood or money or power. Sophia's eyes glistened. So I asked you to coffee, Marco said. And then dinner. And then I asked you to marry me because I knew if I didn't, I'd spend the rest of my life wondering what it would have been like to be loved by someone like you. Marco. I'm not finished. His voice was firm. You asked if I'm protecting you or controlling you. The answer is both. I control who you talk to, where you go, who you spend time with, not because I don't trust you, but because I don't trust the world I come from. Every person you meet could be someone trying to get to me. Every friend could be a liability. Every conversation could be recorded. So yes, I control things. Because the alternative is you ending up dead. He met her eyes. But I'm also protecting you. Every single day. You don't see the threats I stop before they reach you. You don't know about the men I've paid off, the deals I've made, the enemies I've eliminated, all to keep you safe. You don't see any of it because that's the point. That's what protection looks like in my world. Sophia walked back to the bed and sat down on the edge of it. Close enough to touch him. I don't want to be protected like that anymore, she said softly. What do you want? I want to be your partner. Not your responsibility. Marco frowned. You don't know what you're asking. Yes, I do. Sophia's voice was steady. I'm asking you to trust me the way I trust you. I'm asking you to let me in. All the way in. I'm asking you to teach me how to survive in your world instead of hiding me from it. Sophia, if something happened to you because then that's my choice to make. She took his hand. I'm not a child, Marco. I'm your wife. And I'm tired of being treated like I'm made of glass. Marco stared at her. Really looked at her. She wasn't the same woman he'd married 2 years ago. That woman had been soft, naive, sheltered. This woman was harder, sharper, stronger. This woman had watched him kill 3 men and hadn't run. This woman had followed him into a shipping yard full of armed criminals to save her sister. This woman was sitting beside him now, asking to be let into the darkest parts of his life, not because she was reckless, but because she understood that love meant walking into the darkness together. If I do this, Marco said slowly, there's no going back. Once you're in, you're in. You'll know things that could get you killed. You'll be a target, not just collateral damage. Your life will never be normal again. It already isn't normal, Sophia said. So stop trying to make it something it's not. Marco was quiet for a long moment. Then very carefully he squeezed her hand. Okay, he said. Okay. Partners. Sophia's breath caught. Then slowly she smiled. It was small. Tentative. But it was real. Partners, she repeated. Marco pulled her down gently, ignoring the pain in his shoulder. He kissed her forehead. You're going to regret this, he murmured. Probably, Sophia said. But I'll regret it with you. 2 weeks later, Sophia sat in Marco's office. It was a real office. Not the fake one at the restaurant where he met with legitimate business associates. This one was in the basement of a building downtown. No windows. Steel door. Armed guards. Victor stood beside Marco's desk, explaining something about shipment routes. Marco listened, occasionally asking questions. Sophia sat in the corner taking notes. This was the deal. She wanted in. She was in. That meant attending meetings. Learning names. Understanding how everything worked. It was overwhelming. But it was also fascinating. The Koreans want to renegotiate their cut, Victor was saying. They think 15% is too low. It's been 15% for 6 years, Marco said. Why change now? Because they heard about what happened with Giordano. They think you're weak. Marco's jaw tightened. Set up a meeting. When? Tomorrow night. Usual place. Victor nodded and left. Sophia looked up from her notes. Are you weak? Marco glanced at her. What do you think? I think you got shot 2 weeks ago and you're still recovering. I think you've been taking pain medication that makes you slower than usual. I think if the Koreans are smart, they'll wait until you're back to full strength before they try anything. Marco's lips twitched. Not bad. So what are you going to do? Show up tomorrow with enough firepower to remind them why they've been paying 15% for 6 years. Is that smart? No. But it's necessary. Marco leaned back in his chair. In this business, weakness is blood in the water. If I let one group renegotiate, everyone else will try. Better to shut it down now. Sophia frowned. What if they want a war? Then we give them one. People will die. Yes. That doesn't bother you? Marco was quiet for a moment. Then he said, it bothers me less than you dying. The words hung in the air between them. Sophia set down her pen. I'm starting to understand why you kept me away from all of this. Second thoughts. No. Just adjusting. Marco stood up, wincing slightly as his shoulder pulled. He crossed the room and sat down beside Sophia. It's not too late to change your mind, he said quietly. I can still keep you separate from this. You can go back to the bookstore. Back to your life. This is my life now, Sophia said. You said so yourself. Once I'm in, I'm in. I meant that as a warning. I know. They sat in silence. Are you scared? Marco asked. Terrified, Sophia admitted. But not of you. Of what could happen. Of losing you. Of losing myself in all of this. Then we'll be careful. Can we be? Careful, I mean. In a world like this. Marco took her hand. His grip was warm. Steady. We can try. The meeting with the Koreans was held in a restaurant. Not one of Marco's. Neutral ground. Sophia wore a black dress and heels. She looked elegant. Professional. Nothing like the terrified woman who'd climbed out of a crashed car 3 weeks ago. Marco wore a suit that hid the bandage on his shoulder. He moved carefully, but he moved confidently. Victor and 4 other men accompanied them. They sat at nearby tables watching. The Koreans arrived 10 minutes late. 3 men. The one in the middle was younger than Sophia expected. Maybe 40. Sharp suit. Sharper eyes. Mr. Salvatore, the man said, sitting down across from Marco. Thank you for agreeing to meet. Mr. Park, Marco said evenly. You wanted to renegotiate. Straight to business. I appreciate that. Park smiled. Yes. 15% is no longer acceptable. We want 20. No. Park's smile didn't waver. Perhaps you didn't hear me. 20%. Or we find another partner. Then find another partner. Park's smile finally faded. You're not in a position to be making ultimatums, Mr. Salvatore. We've heard about your difficulties. The Giordano situation. Your injury. People are talking. They're saying you're slipping. Are they? They are. And we're simply adjusting our terms to reflect the current market reality. Marco leaned back in his chair. His expression was calm. Almost bored. Let me tell you about market reality, Mr. Park, he said quietly. 3 weeks ago, I killed the head of the Giordano family and 6 of his men. While injured. While protecting my wife and her sister. I gave them exactly one chance to walk away. They didn't take it. So I burned their entire operation to the ground. Park's eyes narrowed. Now you're sitting here, Marco continued, telling me I'm weak. Telling me I need to give you more money because you think I'm vulnerable. But here's what you're not understanding. I'm not vulnerable. I'm angry. And angry men make poor negotiators but excellent executioners. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. So here's my counteroffer, Marco said. You continue paying 15%. You stop spreading rumors about my supposed weakness. And in exchange, I don't spend the next month systematically dismantling every business relationship you've spent the last decade building. Park's jaw tightened. You're threatening me? No. I'm educating you. Marco leaned forward. There's a difference between a man who's hurt and a man who's wounded. A wounded animal is the most dangerous thing in the world. Remember that. Park stared at Marco for a long, tense moment. Then he stood up. 15%, he said quietly. As agreed. Smart choice. Park and his men left without another word. Victor appeared at Marco's side. That went better than expected. He's smarter than Giordano was, Marco said. He knows when to fold. Sophia hadn't said a word during the entire exchange. Now she looked at Marco with something like wonder. That was? She started. Brutal? Marco suggested. I was going to say impressive. Marco almost smiled. Come on. Let's go home. They stood to leave. A gunshot cracked through the air. The window behind them exploded. Down? Victor shouted. Marco grabbed Sophia and pulled her to the ground, covering her body with his. More gunshots. Glass and wood splintering. People screaming. Sophia's ears rang. She couldn't see anything. Couldn't breathe. Marco's weight pressed down on her, protecting her. Then, as suddenly as it started, it stopped. Silence. Marco shifted, looking around. Victor. Clear. Victor called from across the room. 2 shooters. Rooftop across the street. They're gone. Marco slowly released Sophia and helped her sit up. Are you hurt? Sophia shook her head. Her hands were shaking. Her dress was covered in broken glass. But she wasn't hit. You? She asked. Marco touched his shoulder and winced. Reopened. But I'll live. Victor approached, gun still drawn. That wasn't the Koreans. They were already out of the building when the shots were fired. Then who? Marco asked. I don't know. But whoever it was, they weren't trying to kill you. What do you mean? Victor pointed at the wall behind where they'd been standing. 2 bullet holes. Both at chest height. Professional shooters, Victor said. From that range, from that angle, if they wanted you dead, you'd be dead. They were sending a message. Marco's expression darkened. What message? That someone else is watching. Back at the safe house, Sophia sat on the couch while Marco's doctor rebandaged his shoulder. You need to stop getting shot, the doctor said dryly. Working on it, Marco replied. When the doctor finished and left, Marco joined Sophia on the couch. They sat in silence for a long moment. Are you okay? He finally asked. I don't know, Sophia said honestly. I thought I was ready for this. For your world. But actually being shot at. She swallowed hard. That was different. I'm sorry. Don't apologize. I asked for this. She looked at him. But Marco, who's trying to kill us? Giordano's dead. The Koreans backed down. So who? Marco was quiet. His jaw was tight. You know something, Sophia said. I have a suspicion. Tell me. Marco stood up and walked to the window, staring out at the dark city. When I was younger, before I built what I have now, I worked for a man named Alessandro Russo. He ran the entire East Coast. Everything went through him. Drugs, weapons, money, everything. What happened to him? I betrayed him. Sophia's breath caught. Why? Because he asked me to do something I couldn't do. Marco's voice was quiet, strained. He wanted me to kill a family. A father, a mother, 2 kids. They'd seen something they shouldn't have. Alessandro wanted them gone. All of them. What did you do? I helped them disappear instead. I faked their deaths, got them new identities, sent them somewhere Alessandro would never find them. Marco turned to face Sophia. And then I killed Alessandro's second-in-command and took his place. I made it look like a power grab. Like I was ambitious and ruthless and willing to do whatever it took. But it was about the family, Sophia said softly. It was about not murdering children. Marco's eyes were hard. I've done a lot of terrible things, Sophia. But that was a line I wouldn't cross. So Alessandro is dead? That's what everyone thinks. But you don't think so. I never found his body. And Alessandro Russo was not the kind of man who died quietly. Marco crossed back to the couch. If he's alive, if he's been hiding all these years, waiting for the right moment. He'd want revenge, Sophia finished. Yes. Then we need to find him first. Marco looked at her. We. You said I'm your partner now. So yes. We. Despite everything, the gunshots, the danger, the blood on his shoulder, Marco smiled. You're either very brave or very stupid. Can't I be both? Apparently. Sophia stood up and faced him. So how do we find a ghost? We start with the people who knew him best, Marco said. And we hope they're willing to talk before Alessandro finds us first. The man they needed to see lived in a retirement home in Connecticut. His name was Anthony. He was 73 years old. He'd been Alessandro's driver for 20 years. Marco and Sophia arrived on a Tuesday morning. The nursing home smelled like antiseptic and old coffee. Classical music played softly from hidden speakers. They found Anthony in the garden, feeding birds from a bench. I was wondering when you'd come, Anthony said without looking up. Marco sat down beside him. Sophia stood nearby watching. How did you know I would? Marco asked. Because he's back. Anthony tossed another handful of seeds. The birds swarmed. And you're the only one smart enough to realize it. Where is he? I don't know. He doesn't tell me things anymore. Not since. Anthony trailed off. Since I took over. Since you tried to kill him. Yes. Anthony finally looked at Marco. His eyes were cloudy with age but sharp. He survived, you know. The fire you set. He survived and he's been planning this for 10 years. Sophia stepped forward. Planning what? Anthony glanced at her. You must be the wife. The bookstore girl. He smiled sadly. He knows about you. He knows everything about you. Your sister. Your aunt in Boston. Your favorite coffee shop. Everything. Sophia's blood ran cold. What does he want? Marco asked, his voice tight. What he's always wanted. Everything you have. Everyone you love. He wants to take it all away slowly, piece by piece, until you're broken. And then he'll kill you. Why wait 10 years? Because Alessandro isn't interested in quick revenge. He's interested in perfect revenge. He's been watching you, studying you, waiting for you to find something worth living for. Anthony looked at Sophia. And now you have. Marco stood up. Tell me where he is. I told you I don't. Anthony. Marco's voice was cold. I let you live when I took over. I made sure you were taken care of. That you had a good retirement. That your family was protected. Don't make me regret that kindness. Anthony was quiet for a long moment. Then he sighed. There's a warehouse. South side. Near the old docks. He's been using it as a base. But Marco, Anthony grabbed his arm. He's not alone. He's built something new. Something bigger than what he had before. If you go after him, you won't come back. We'll see. As they walked back to the car, Sophia said quietly, This is a trap, isn't it? Probably. And you're going anyway. Yes. Sophia stopped walking. Marco turned to face her. Why? She asked. Why walk into a trap when we could run? We could leave the city. Change our names. Start over somewhere he'd never find us. Marco looked at her for a long moment. Then he stepped closer and cupped her face in his hands. Because running means looking over our shoulders for the rest of our lives, he said softly. It means never being safe. Never being free. And I didn't survive the last 10 years just to spend the rest of my life afraid. But you might die. I might. And that doesn't scare you? It terrifies me, Marco admitted. But you know what scares me more? The idea that he could hurt you and I'd be powerless to stop it. At least this way, I control when and where the fight happens. Sophia's eyes filled with tears. I don't want you to be a hero, Marco. I just want you to be alive. I know. He kissed her forehead. But sometimes those are the same thing. They went to the warehouse at midnight. Victor and 12 men accompanied them. They were armed, prepared, ready for war. The building loomed in the darkness, silent and empty. Too empty. I don't like this, Victor muttered. Neither do I, Marco said. But we're here now. They approached carefully. Victor's men fanned out, checking corners, watching for movement. Nothing. Marco pushed open the main door. It swung inward with a creak. Inside, the warehouse was massive. Empty. Moonlight streamed through broken windows, casting long shadows across the concrete floor. And in the center of the space, sitting in a single chair, was a man. He was old. Maybe 65. Gray hair. Expensive suit. And eyes that looked like they'd seen the worst parts of hell and decided to stay there. Alessandro Russo. Hello, Marco, Alessandro said. His voice was smooth. Cultured. It's been a long time. Marco stepped forward, gun drawn. 10 years. 10 years, Alessandro agreed. 10 years of watching you build an empire on the ashes of mine. 10 years of watching you play king. 10 years of waiting for this exact moment. If you wanted me dead, you could have killed me 100 times by now. Oh, I don't want you dead, Marco. Alessandro smiled. It was the smile of a snake. I want you destroyed. There's a difference. Where are your men? Victor asked, his gun trained on Alessandro. My men. Alessandro chuckled. Look around, Victor. They're already here. Lights flooded the warehouse. 50 men emerged from the shadows. They surrounded Marco's group, guns raised. They were outnumbered 4-1. Victor swore under his breath. Alessandro stood up from his chair, brushing off his suit. You see, Marco, the problem with betrayal is that it teaches the betrayed to be better at the game. You taught me that 10 years ago. And I've spent every day since then learning from my mistakes. What do you want? Marco asked. His voice was steady, but Sophia could see the tension in his shoulders. I want you to understand what you took from me, Alessandro said. My business, my reputation, my legacy. But most importantly, my family. You never had a family. I did. Once. Alessandro's expression hardened. A wife. A daughter. They died in the fire you set. The fire you started to cover your tracks when you betrayed me. Marco's face went pale. I didn't know they were there. The intelligence said. The intelligence was wrong. Alessandro's voice was ice. And now, Marco, you're going to understand what it feels like to lose everything. He pulled out a phone and pressed a button. A screen descended from the ceiling. It flickered to life. Sophia's blood turned to ice. On the screen was Lily, her sister, tied to a chair, gagged, terrified. No, Sophia whispered. She's in Boston, isn't she? Alessandro said pleasantly. With your aunt. Very predictable, Mrs. Salvatore. Very easy to find. Sophia lunged forward. Marco caught her, holding her back. Let her go, Marco said. His voice was deadly calm. She's got nothing to do with this. Neither did my daughter. But she burned alive anyway. Alessandro's eyes glittered. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to put down your weapons. You're going to watch while I execute your wife's sister. And then you're going to spend the rest of your very short life knowing that you couldn't protect the people you love. Just like I couldn't protect mine. The warehouse was silent. Sophia could hear her own heartbeat. Could feel Marco's grip on her arm, tight and desperate. Then Marco did something unexpected. He started laughing. Alessandro frowned. What's so funny? You, Marco said. You think you've won. You think you've planned for everything. But you made one critical mistake. And what's that? Marco looked directly into Alessandro's eyes. You assumed I came here alone. Alessandro's expression faltered. What? The girl on the screen? Marco said. That's not Lily. The image flickered, then changed. A different woman appeared, older, scarred, dressed in tactical gear. She waved at the camera. That's Rachel, Marco continued. Former Special Forces. She's been posing as Lily for the past 2 days. Lily is currently on a plane to somewhere you'll never find her. And Rachel? Marco smiled. She's very good at killing people who threaten my family. The feed cut out. Alessandro's face went red. You. And your 50 men? Marco continued. Check your phones. Alessandro pulled out his phone. His face went white. What you're seeing, Marco said, are the federal arrest warrants for every single person in this building. Names, charges, evidence, everything. You see, Alessandro, while you were planning your revenge, I was building a case. 10 years of documentation. Recorded conversations. Financial records. Everything the FBI needs to dismantle your entire operation. You're bluffing. Am I? Marco tilted his head. There are 20 federal agents surrounding this building right now. They're waiting for my signal. All I have to do is make one phone call, and everyone here goes to prison for the rest of their lives. Then you'll go down too. Maybe. But I've made arrangements. Sophia and Lily will be protected. My assets will be transferred. I've spent the last 2 weeks preparing for this exact scenario. Marco's voice was hard. So here's my offer, Alessandro. You let us walk out of here. You disappear. You go back to whatever hole you've been hiding in for the past decade. And in exchange, I don't make that phone call. Alessandro stared at him. The warehouse was completely silent. You think you're so smart, Alessandro finally said. You think you've outplayed me. I know I have. Then you're a fool. Alessandro raised his gun. 2 shots rang out. Alessandro collapsed, a red stain spreading across his chest. Victor lowered his weapon, smoke curling from the barrel. The warehouse exploded into chaos. Alessandro's men shouted, raising their weapons. Freeze! FBI! The doors burst open. 20 federal agents in tactical gear flooded into the warehouse. They moved with precision, disarming Alessandro's men, forcing them to the ground. Marco hadn't been bluffing. An agent approached, a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes. Mr. Salvatore. We had an agreement. And I'm honoring it, Marco said. Full cooperation. Complete testimony. Everything you need. The agent nodded. Then you're free to go. For now. Marco took Sophia's hand. They walked through the chaos, past the shouting agents and cursing criminals, out into the cool night air. Victor followed along with his men. When they were far enough away, Sophia finally found her voice. What just happened? Marco stopped walking and turned to face her. I made a deal. 2 weeks ago, after the shooting at the restaurant, I contacted the FBI. Told them I'd give them everything, names, records, testimony, in exchange for immunity for you, for Lily, and for Victor's men. And you? Marco was quiet. I'll probably go to prison. Not for long, the FBI wants the bigger fish. But I'll do some time. Sophia's chest tightened. How long? 3 to 5 years. Maybe less with good behavior. Tears streamed down Sophia's face. You should have told me. I couldn't. If Alessandro thought for even a second that I was cooperating with the feds, he would have killed you immediately. Marco wiped away her tears with his thumbs. This was the only way to keep you safe, but 3 to 5 years is better than you being dead, Marco said firmly. Is better than spending the rest of our lives running. Is better than looking over our shoulders every day wondering when Alessandro would finally make his move. Sophia shook her head. I don't want you to go to prison. I know. But this is the price. This is what it costs to be free of this life. Marco pulled her close. And when I get out, we'll start over. Really start over. No more secrets. No more danger. Just us. Sophia buried her face in his chest and cried. Marco held her, resting his chin on top of her head. I love you, he whispered. It was the first time he'd ever said it. Sophia looked up at him, tears still streaming down her face. I love you too. They stood there together as the sirens wailed and the federal agents loaded Alessandro's men into vans and the city slowly woke up to a new day. A day without Alessandro Russo. A day without the constant threat of violence. A day that marked the end of one story and the beginning of another. The bookstore smelled like coffee and old paper. Sophia stood behind the counter, ringing up a customer. A teenage girl who'd bought 3 romance novels and looked embarrassed about it. Don't be, Sophia said with a smile. These are great choices. The girl blushed and left. Sophia wiped down the counter and glanced at the clock. Almost closing time. The bell above the door chimed. Sophia looked up. Marco stood in the doorway. He looked different. Thinner. A little older. His suit was cheaper than the ones he used to wear. But his eyes were the same. Sophia's breath caught. You're early, she said softly. Good behavior, Marco replied. They stared at each other across the bookstore. Then Sophia ran. She crossed the distance between them in seconds, throwing her arms around him. Marco caught her, holding her tight, his face buried in her hair. I missed you, Sophia whispered. I missed you too. They held each other for a long moment. Then Marco pulled back just enough to look at her. How's Lily? He asked. Good. She's teaching in Oregon now. She asks about you all the time. And the bookstore? Staying afloat. Barely. Sophia laughed. Turns out I'm not very good at business. Good thing you married someone who is. Are you going to help me run a bookstore now? If you'll let me. Sophia looked at him. Really looked at him. At this man who'd killed for her, who'd gone to prison for her, who'd given up everything so she could be safe. Always, she said. Marco kissed her. It was soft. Gentle. The kiss of 2 people who'd survived hell and somehow found their way back to each other. When they finally pulled apart, Sophia asked the question she'd been holding in for 5 years. What do we do now? Marco smiled. We live. And for the first time in a long time that felt like enough. The end.